2004 was arguably one of the most important years for video games in recent memory. Half-Life 2, GTA San Andreas, Metal Gear Solid 3 were all massive hits that transformed the medium. They were also all sequels to existing franchises. So when industry veteran Ubisoft released the critically acclaimed Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time the year before, they're hoping to take the mechanics and settings of Sands of Time and turn it into an industry-breaking sequel. But many on the development team were frustrated by the constraints of the previous game. Right off the bat, the titular character of Sands of Time, the Prince, was too limiting. Patrice Desilets, creative director on Sands of Time, expressed this in an interview with Polygon, saying, "What is a prince other than someone that is waiting to be a king?" Many also felt that Prince's setting was a major selling point, but that if a sequel was to be made, they needed to break out of the primarily linear level design. Alex Druin, animation art director on Sands of Time, expressed this in an interview with Polygon as well, saying, "What we wanted to do is basically take the Prince of Persia acrobatic gameplay and push it into an open world." The confidence was really there inside the team because we just finished Sands of Time, which was a good game, so we were really trying to push the borders, or the limit. What's even crazier was that this proposed sequel was being made for the next generation of consoles without even knowing how they worked. Desilets was surprised that we have no clue that the PS3 will be a PS3 and the 360 will exist. But they had to innovate regardless, with Desilets getting a call from the higher-ups at Ubisoft, mandating the following idea. So it's like Prince of Persia Next Generation, but try to redefine the action-adventure genre into a next generation of platforms. This is how it all started. This game would not go on to become a Prince of Persia sequel. It would go on to become something much, much bigger. Assassin's Creed is many things. It's a trip through history. It's a constant battle between order and chaos, but most of all, it's a game that puts you in the middle of all of this and gives you the power to experience and learn from a dramatic retelling of the past. The franchise has changed so much in its 15-year history, often to match consumer expectations and tastes. Assassin's Creed Unity took a direction towards live service as more online multiplayer and co-op games became successful. Assassin's Creed Origins was nearly a complete rebrand for the franchise, as the gameplay transformed into an open-world RPG thanks to the success of games like The Witcher 3. So when Ubisoft announced Assassin's Creed Mirage last year, most were expecting a bold new direction for the developer's signature IP, but that was the opposite of what Ubisoft had planned. Assassin's Creed Mirage was a game to be built on an existing character's story in a semi-familiar setting and was a quote-unquote return to the series' roots. Assassin's Creed has been through it all. Ups, downs, growing pains, and everything in between. But as the franchise celebrates its 15th anniversary this year, I have many questions. Where has the franchise come from? Where has it gone? And has it truly changed? Let me also preface this by saying that Assassin's Creed is one of my favorite franchises of all time, so any critiques made in this video here are out of love for the franchise. Desilets achieved his mission. The Ubisoft team pushed the limit of what an open-world game was to look like in 2007 with Assassin's Creed, and they enabled players to explore these environments with two central mechanics, parkour and stealth. These gameplay mechanics being so integral to the game fall in line with the environments and stories. In nearly every historical setting that you're in, the land is in strife, the politics are tumultuous, and it's happening where nearly anyone with any type of monetary, religious, or political influence can keep people in a cycle of fear and violence. That kind of fear is paralyzing, and the only way to win that kind of war is to hit back with equal ferocity. You want to move like a cat in the night, which is reflected in the parkour, and strike with equal velocity, which is reflected in the stealthy way that the main character Altair navigates his missions. Parkour and stealth are essential to advancing the story and making the setting of Assassin's Creed 1 feel like a place that you would belong. The game is broken down into 6 chapters between 3 major cities in the Middle East, as well as a wilderness section and the home base castle of Masyaf. The main portions of the game are you locating missions around the various districts of the 3 main cities and then executing them stealthily. Half the fun is parkouring to and from the missions. The cities are your playground, quite literally built for you to jump and swing and leap around like a Middle Eastern orangutan. You can swing above open-air markets on carefully placed poles, you can scale entire monuments, and you can cross entire districts of a major city like Damascus in less than a minute. But as with this game and many others down the line, there are some glaring issues with how these parkour mechanics play out in practice. Many times either going to a mission, coming back from a mission, or even worse during a mission, I felt powerless as the game pretty much decided where it was going to put me no matter what button I chose to press. I'd fall from tall buildings, jump into water, run into enemy guards' line of sight without meaning to, you name it, and the issue would arise. Unfortunately, the stealth gameplay in AC1 shares these janky qualities. In theory, you're able to blend in with the crowd, hide from enemies in designated haystacks and other hiding spots if you're spotted, and assassinate enemies without bystanders taking a second look. In practice, you have no dedicated crouch or stealth mode button. You have to basically wait until you aren't in an enemy's line of sight to move anywhere, and you don't know if they hear you or not. At certain times, it's a bit of a guessing game. Eagle vision is especially helpful in this game for this exact reason, despite it feeling like cheating. But essentially, the game is centered around you walking up to a guard behind him, assassinating him, and then moving on to the next one like clockwork. It's easy to excuse these gameplay flaws because of how old the game is, but many other games that came out in 2007 had arguably better controls and stealth gameplay. At its core, the gameplay is fairly straightforward. So how did Assassin's Creed Mirage improve on it in 15 years since the first game came out? The franchise's additions to gameplay are what I like to call the Ubisoft masterclass, innovation by addition. They never rework anything that may feel dull, but constantly add new mechanics to keep things fresh. It began immediately after AC1 came out. Assassin's Creed 2 added new tools that you could use like the hidden blade attachments, AC3 added a bow and more accurate pistols, Black Flag added a blow dart and the rope blades, AC Syndicate added a motorized grappling hook, the list goes on. The issue with innovation by addition is in the implementation. Jeez, that was a mouthful. By just adding more and more mechanics on top of the existing framework without making existing mechanics more user-friendly, you don't leave yourself a lot of room for these mechanics to grow on their own. How am I supposed to use all these new tools if the enemy AI hasn't been updated since the 2000s? And how am I supposed to use all these new parkour tricks without running into 8 trillion movement bugs? At its core, the gameplay of Assassin's Creed is consistent throughout the whole series, and nowhere is that more apparent than in Mirage. The updated parkour mechanics on Ubisoft's new Anvil engine are much appreciated, but the responsiveness issues still linger like a shadow of the past. The controller will still just not obey me when I want to move in a certain direction, and it's gotten me into trouble when I'm running away from enemies. But hey, at least it looks smoother. Also, guards still turn around as you assassinate them for some reason. Why do they do that? On the other hand, Ubisoft Bordeaux made some great decisions with the combat by streamlining it back to the series' roots. Bassam's primary way of killing enemies is with the hidden blade and also his sword, but it's the additional tools that he unlocks where the game shines. Smoke bombs, blow darts, and throwing knives are extremely satisfying to hit. These tools exist in addition to Assassin's Focus, which turns you into an invisible monster that can assassinate up to 5 targets in your line of sight at one time. The variety of tools at your disposal is what makes some of the combat encounters in Assassin's Creed Mirage feel engaging, and allows for a lot of player experimentation, especially in the game's various missions. My favorite mission in Assassin's Creed Mirage had to be in the second major arc that took place in the House of Wisdom. The house is a massive complex, full of libraries and scrolls and intellectuals, a treasure trove of the total sum of knowledge from the Abbasid Caliphate. Within these hallowed halls lies a dissident, a lecturer at the House of Wisdom, who is a threat to the freedom of the people and a puppet of the Order of the Ancients. The protagonist, Bassam, must eliminate him. The way I completed this mission, I found a way into the complex where Bassam disguises himself as one of the patients of the target, Fazil. I learned his motives to influence patients like Bassam with a strange contraption, and actively withhold knowledge from the populace via book burnings. After which you slice his throat and deliver a very Batman-esque one-liner.
Science is the noblest purpose. Knowledge is the greatest power.
No.
No? Then what?
Justice.
AC Mirage brought back these black box style of missions that simply gives you a target to kill and you're given the tools to accomplish your task by any means necessary. You're offered a couple of pre-written options, but for most missions you're able to bull rush your way into a building or complex and kill your target with enough tight gameplay. Mirage tweaked these a bit by essentially forcing you into one of the pre-written scenarios because you cannot quote-unquote draw out your target unless you do one of them. But regardless, these scenarios are very creative and they're engaging ways to keep you involved in the story to its end. But sadly, this mission style is only limited to the very ends of story arcs in this game. The majority of missions Basim is tasked with involves you going into a building, sussing out the enemies in that building, and picking them off one by one until you either kill a major target, quote-unquote investigate a building, or pick up an item and deliver it back to whoever gave you the mission in the first place. Lack of mission variety is something that's existed since the franchise's first entry. Assassin's Creed 1's missions involves you going into a bureau, investigating various districts in a city by doing the same 3 or 4 activities, and then finding the quote-unquote big boss and killing him before he runs away. Extremely copy and paste. The good thing is that in Mirage, a lack of mission variety has a very easy workaround by utilizing Basim's tools. You might go into an encounter area, throw a smoke bomb, and then use Assassin's Focus to kill all the enemies in 5 seconds. Or you could be sneakier about it and pick each goon off one by one. Even for missions that just require you to get an item, you might not even need to kill anybody at all. But the game has a very serious issue with repetitive level design, as many of the buildings in the smaller missions had very similar layouts, which makes every single one of these smaller encounters feel like a slog. But finally, the part I'm sure you've all been waiting for is coming, because oh boy, this game has a lot of trailing missions. The game can do without most of them. I understand that these walking and talking sections are semi-critical for expository dialogue, characterization, and establishing settings, but why am I doing a trailing mission in the last part of the story? Why are 50% of the trailing missions just Basim talking to himself? For a game whose core elements are fast and quick combat, these slow parts of the game, when you're talking to another character for 2 whole minutes at a time, takes you out of the action too much, often compromising critical parts of the story. Lately, I've been wanting to improve my videos via better writing, so I've been reading a book called A Swim in a Pond in the Rain by George Saunders, which analyzes 8 old Russian short stories and novellas from authors like Leo Tolstoy and Anton Chekhov. The author attempts to break down what makes a short story, or any story for that matter, worth telling. Hopefully this will actually make my scripts better. One of Anton Chekhov's defining characteristics as an author that I've learned from this book is his use of patterns, specifically within characters. For example, if you wake up every morning and go to the store to buy some gum, that's a pattern. Not a very interesting pattern, but a pattern nonetheless. How does that story get interesting? Well, let's say you get up similar to every other morning, you go to the store to buy some gum, but all of a sudden a robber bursts through the door and holds up the cashier at gunpoint. You're surprised, and now you're feeling fear, anxiousness. It's a clear break in the pattern. Tension. Saunders calls this propulsion by pattern. It's about the slight deviations to the everyday actions of the characters that make readers want to keep reading, and I think that's an excellent way to analyze video games. Assassin's Creed tells the same story every game. Let's not kid ourselves. 2 opposing forces, one for good and one for evil, one for order and one for freedom, iterated several times over. But it's the small tweaks that make an AC game's story worth telling. Specifically, it's an interesting case study to compare AC1 and Mirage together, because they are so similar. So far, I haven't spoiled any plot details about Assassin's Creed 1 or Assassin's Creed Mirage, but I'm going to be talking about those in this part of the video, so if you haven't watched or played either of those, here's your spoiler warning. Assassin's Creed begins with an arrogant Altair breaking the rules of the Brotherhood by leaving his fellow assassin behind. He sees his actions as justified because he believes he's helping the Brotherhood and what they stand for. He's brash and defiant in the face of authority, causing his mentor, Mualim, to knock him down a few pegs by demoting him to a trainee. Mualim essentially makes Altair his errand boy, presenting our protagonist with names on a list for him to remove from this world without knowing how they're related. As he executes more and more of the Brotherhood's targets, he starts to learn about their connections to the Templars and what role the Brotherhood of Assassins plays in stopping them from total world domination.
Is the answer not obvious? The Templars desire control. Each man, as you've noted, wanted to claim their cities in the Templar name, that the Templars themselves might rule the Holy Land and eventually beyond.
And as an added bonus, Altair becomes more respectful of authority and more sure of himself as a person.
You have nothing to fear. I do not seek revenge, but knowledge.
Truly you are not the man I once knew.
My work has taught me many things, revealed secrets to me, but there are still pieces of this puzzle I do not possess.
But when he makes his final discovery about the Brotherhood, he realizes the very man he was serving the whole time, Mualim, has succumbed to the selfish and arrogant desires that Altair was shamed for having in the first place. Altair stops him from using a powerful artifact from those who came before to influence the minds of millions of people. In Mirage, the roles are flipped. Basim knows exactly what he signed up for. He's lived for the Hidden Ones, given his entire life to them in the name of stopping the Order of the Ancients. He obeys his mentor Roshan without question, but the true struggle is inside of him. While Basim is ridding Baghdad of the Order, he is tormented by an inner demon, a jinni, that paralyzes him with fear and haunts his dreams and waking hours alike. But when he turns to his mentor for help, she states plainly that he's doing the right thing, and that his issues aren't meant to be solved by anything to do with the Hidden Ones. So he presses on, being further tormented by this ghastly apparition as he does more and more of the Hidden Ones' dirty work. All of this culminates with Basim finding a precursor artifact, a piece of those who came before. Instantly, he knows that he is somehow connected to it, having been a precursor in his past life. He's experienced hundreds of lifetimes full of trauma without even realizing it. His mentor Roshan hid this from him on purpose, while playing him like a fiddle the entire time as if he was oblivious to his heritage. Basim ends up fighting Roshan to get to the precursor site and to his destiny under the Assassin's base and wins. It's interesting to examine these stories back to back because I genuinely think that Mirage's ideas are some of the best in the series in terms of real emotions and a compelling story. The writing breaks the tropes of a normal AC game and focuses on the actual character of Basim more than what his role is in the bigger global conflict. Basim has to grapple with his literal inner demons and realize what his ancestry means. But these ideas fall flat in execution, much like in Assassin's Creed 1. Any resemblance of an overarching plot is rarely told through gameplay in the stories, save for maybe the endings. The quote-unquote investigating you do in each of the micro settings is done for just finding Altair or Basim's next target. Therefore, all of the heavy lifting is done through external dialogue and cutscenes. Most of the external dialogue happens in the trailing missions, or when the protagonist is talking to himself on the way to the next mission. This dialogue feels like so many other roadblocks that Ubisoft keeps placing in your way until you get to the next mission. So when they are trying to deliver important story details, it gets left by the wayside. This leaves cutscenes to pick up the slack. It's insane to me how the quality of cutscenes in Assassin's Creed have almost followed a normal distribution. I think that AC Unity, despite all of its bugs, looks almost better than Mirage. And Unity is almost 10 years old at this point. Which goes to show that realism does not always mean that the game looks better. Heck, some cutscenes in Assassin's Creed 1 hold more emotion and gravity than others in Mirage, which is saying something because half the time in Assassin's Creed 1 you can't even see the characters' faces. I suggest you check out this video by Stealthy Wiley called Cutscenes Are Evolving, Just Backwards. It goes to show how the new facial animations for these cutscenes are just so mechanical, so disconnected from the dialogue that is coming out of these characters' mouths. But oftentimes that accompanying dialogue isn't much better, save for a few blockbuster performances by the voice actors for Basim and Roshan. But just look at this scene from Assassin's Creed Brotherhood.
As if I could! It was not my decision to attack Monteriggione, it was yours! It is high time you took responsibilities for your actions.
My accomplishments! Despite the constant interference of failures like you!
Now look at this scene from Assassin's Creed Mirage.
Bard is searching for his murderer, a young thief of your description. They will not stop until they have found you. And when they do, it will not be a prison they throw you into. It will be a shallow grave. I'm giving you a second chance. Take it.
I can't help but think that Ubisoft whiffed on a massive opportunity with this game. Basim and Altair's stories show an extremely interesting dichotomy that ties 15 years of Assassin's Creed together beautifully. At the beginning of Assassin's Creed 1, Altair is denied knowledge about the true purpose of the Brotherhood of Assassins, so he must improve his inner self and overcome his arrogance to rise to the occasion. Basim, on the other hand, knows everything about the Hidden Ones and their purpose, but he's actively being denied his inner self by his mentor, and is forced to be the Order's puppet until he fights his way out of it, becoming a pseudo-villain in the end. These two stories are two lines in the sand, overlapping with betrayal and ancestry and obedience, but two entirely different people emerge at the end. By not giving the game the tools to succeed, Ubisoft is shorthanding some of the best ideas the series has to offer. But sadly, Assassin's Creed has never changed. Assassin's Creed at its core has never changed. It's been the same gameplay, same mission design, same story, all rolled up into the same game released a bunch of different times. But does the game need to change? Ultimately, I think the formula works, but certain portions need serious reworking. The core gameplay and story elements of AC games are engaging for some people, and it's why it's one of the best-selling gaming franchises of the 21st century, more than even Madden or Zelda. But the series needs some serious reworking in terms of bugs, mission design, and story elements to make it last even longer if that's what Ubisoft wants to do. I will continue to play these games, not because of only nostalgia or not because I'm a history buff, and definitely not because I'm a masochist that loves completing games just to complete them, but because I know what these games can be when they're at their best. End of video segue. I'm going to be planning on reviving my long dead Substack. I'm just going to be writing some reviews, some other pieces on gaming news here and there, and right now I have a review for the game Cocoon up by the time that this video goes live. So if you're interested in puzzle games, check it out if you'd like. Please like and subscribe and all of that, and sincerely, thank you so much for watching my video.